Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a genuinely monumental challenge. We're looking at how massive industrial players are tangibly addressing climate change, and we're doing it without any of the usual corporate cheerleading. Think about the cars we drive every single day, the infrastructure required to build them, and the sheer amount of energy needed to make the whole thing hum. We're going to skip the buzzwords today and look directly at the blueprints of one of the largest auto manufacturers in the world. We want to see what real industrial-scale sustainability actually looks like on the ground.
Okay, let's dive into this. When we talk about green tech, our minds usually jump straight to sleek electric vehicles or maybe giant offshore wind farms, right? But the actual scale of decarbonizing heavy industry, the physical factories where millions of vehicles are forged, painted, and assembled, is a completely different beast. It literally requires re-engineering the very DNA of how a company operates, how it consumes power, and how it moves its products around the world.
To really grasp the high stakes involved here, just think about this number, 42. By the financial year 2030-31, Maruti Suzuki has set a firm, intermediate target to reduce its absolute Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon dioxide emissions by 42% compared to FY 2022-23. So that's the emissions from what they burn directly plus the energy they buy. That is a staggering reduction in just a few short years, especially for a company that's actively scaling up its production volumes. Hitting a target like that doesn't just happen by accident. It takes a highly surgical, multi-layered approach.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The Green Industry Challenge. 2. Powering plants with renewables. 3. Turning waste into wealth. 4. Shifting to green logistics. And 5. The road to net zero.
All right, part 1, the Green Industry Challenge, Scale and Scope.
Let's start by looking at the Kharkhoda plant as our primary micro-level example, because heavy industry sustainability can sound a bit abstract until you look at the details. Picture a sprawling 800-acre facility complete with an integrated supplier park. The energy and logistical footprint of manufacturing cars at this scale is just mind-blowing, but the goal here is absolutely unprecedented. Kharkhoda aims to meet 100% of its electricity requirements through renewable energy alone. When you have a problem this massive, you really have to build solutions that match its scale.
Moving on to part 2, powering plants with renewables, solar and batteries.
Maruti Suzuki is aggressively ramping up its solar footprint across its manufacturing facilities. They're jumping from a current baseline of 79 megawatt peak all the way to a target of 319 megawatt peak by FY 2030-31. That is a massive scale-up. It involves incredibly complex site assessments, rooftop structural evaluations, you name it. But as it turns out, generating the power is actually only half the battle. You also have to figure out what to do with that power when the factory goes quiet.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really common yet rarely talked about industrial headache, the holiday wastage problem. Think about it. When the factory shuts down for holidays, the 20-megawatt solar plant at Kharkhoda keeps soaking up the sun and generating electricity. But with no demand, all that clean energy just goes to waste. The solution? A 1-megawatt-hour battery energy storage system, or BESS. It's essentially a giant power bank that saves sunshine for a rainy day. It stores the excess electricity during low demand so they can deploy it exactly when the factory needs it most.
Now, this kind of integration isn't just about corporate efficiency, it's about measurable environmental impact. This 1-megawatt-hour BESS pilot at Kharkhoda is going to independently cut down nearly 54 tons of CO2 emissions annually over its 15-year life cycle. Plus, it actively improves the stability of the local grid. Why does that matter to us? Well, it means fewer blackouts, way more reliable manufacturing uptime, and ultimately, a much more stable supply chain for the products we use every day.
Okay, part 3, turning waste into wealth, the biogas circular economy.
I actually love this part because it totally demystifies how these closed-loop systems work in reality. It's like a giant puzzle. Step 1, you collect agricultural feedstock, things like Napier grass, paddy straw, and even food waste right out of the facility canteens. Step 2, utilize anaerobic digestion technology, basically a giant oxygen-free stomach that organically breaks all that matter down. Step 3, extract the raw biogas. And where does it go? Right back into the factory to heat the paint shops. As a fantastic bonus, the byproduct is fermented organic manure, which goes straight into internal horticulture. You are literally using yesterday's lunch leftovers to heat the factory today.
And they are expanding this super rapidly. They recently bumped up the Manesar plant to 0.7 tons per day. But the real game changer is the massive 10 tons per day plant they're commissioning in Kharkhoda by FY 2026-27. At full capacity, this single plant is going to provide 20% of Kharkhoda's total gas requirement and mitigate 9,490 tons of CO2. In a world where natural gas supply chains are constantly getting strained, having locally produced biogas like this gives a factory crucial operational resilience.
Let's move to part 4 and see how this builds outward. Shifting to green logistics, the modal shift.
Now, you can't just snap your fingers and magically change how millions of cars are transported across the country. It takes systematic evolution. From being the first auto manufacturer to get a freight train operator license way back in May 2013, they've steadily accelerated. By March 2024, they were directly integrating government railway infrastructure into their plants, with massive in-plant sidings in Gujarat. They're expanding to Kashmir rail dispatches by October 2025, all leading up to a monumental goal of 3 million cumulative rail-based vehicle dispatches by March 2026.
Just look at this dramatic shift away from road transport. Back in FY 2014-15, rail accounted for just 5% of their outbound logistics. Fast forward to FY 25-26, and that slice balloons to 26.5%. The jump from 2 million to 3 million total dispatches actually happened in a record 21 months. And they aren't stopping there. The future goal is to aggressively push rail dispatches all the way to 35% by 2030-31.
To put the true impact of this into perspective, think about the sheer geography involved here. In October 2025, a train carrying over 100 vehicles left an in-plant railway siding and traveled over 850 kilometers to a terminal in Kashmir, literally crossing the world's highest railway arch bridge over the Chenab River. That single train journey bypassed the need for thousands of heavily polluting trucks on crowded highways. For you and me, that translates to drastically eased road congestion, lower diesel emissions, and much cleaner air in the communities we live in.
So the crucial point is how all of this connects. As Maruti Suzuki's MD and CEO Hisashi Takeuchi points out, this entire strategy is deeply aligned with the broader national focus on building self-reliant energy ecosystems. These aren't just isolated company goals. Micro-level corporate strategies like building rail sidings directly inside factories or developing local biogas, they directly align with and accelerate massive macroeconomic priorities.
Finally, part 5. The road to net zero, Verra and carbon credits.
We need to quickly define a key term here: the Modal Shift Transportation Project. Now, this isn't just empty corporate phrasing. It is a strictly verified initiative that generates real carbon credits by proving with hard data that a company has successfully transitioned its freight movement away from high-emission roads and onto an efficient rail network.
And the results? They are globally significant. That Gujarat in-plant railway siding we mentioned, it was actually registered as the world's first modal shift transportation project under the Verified Carbon Standard program of Verra, which is the world's largest voluntary carbon credit registry. Through this single project alone, they're expected to achieve a massive 170,000 carbon credits over a 10-year period. It absolutely proves that extreme operational efficiency and environmental responsibility can go hand in hand. But of course, pulling the whole shebang off, the sprawling solar arrays, the massive battery systems, the waste-to-wealth biogas plants, and the integrated railway infrastructure, it requires some incredibly serious financial commitment. To bring this green ecosystem to life, a strategic investment of 925 crore rupees has been explicitly earmarked for these green energy initiatives by FY 2030-31. That is the absolute hard capital expenditure required to transition a legacy-heavy industry into a genuinely sustainable powerhouse.
So, we've essentially just walked through a step-by-step masterclass on decarbonization at a truly industrial scale. We've looked at the hardware, the complex logistics, and the capital required to make it a reality. So, I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. With the blueprint for green-heavy industry now clearly drawn, and the environmental and economic benefits verified on a global scale, how fast will the rest of the manufacturing world catch up? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this gives you a sharper, clearer view of what the future of industry truly looks like. Catch you next time.